Alright, I got my Halloween setup ready, decorations up, my scary Funkos, my little skeleton, my anime witch, and I guess the new big slasher villain. I didn't expect that, but who the... I'm kind of hoping I wouldn't have to do one of these again. Oh, well, looks like I'm at least dressed for it this time already. That's cool. So, Terrifier 2, and it's a steelbook. That's nice. And an AMC gift card. I guess I have to go to the theater for the next one. But why was that left open? What? Hello there. You just wait right there. I'm just gonna... Crap. I got a few left. I guess this doesn't really work then. So, what do you, like, want to... Oh. Let's forget that. Oh, you want me to come sit that? That's fair. I mean, you're gonna have to take me somewhere for this, okay. Okay, we're sitting it down. I'll sit here. Okay. And you'll be right next to me. That's cool too, I guess. You want me to review these? Like, you want me to review your... Okay. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. There's a movie missing here. How are we gonna... You're so right, Tubi. Internet's always got me. So, before we start, what if I don't like them? Like, what if I just straight up don't? Oh boy. Why did they keep getting longer? Those was a lot of movie to watch in one sitting. You had to take me out for this one. Do you want me to start the review part now? I'm just gonna squeeze past you. Okay. Hello, I'm Shyboy616, and welcome to this year's Halloween special. We're talking all about Terrifier. If you're watching this when it's new, then that means Terrifier 3 just came out a few weeks before in theaters. There was one question on my mind when I saw that Terrifier 3 was even announced, and that was, how did we even get here? How did we get from this weird indie project that's just so gross, gory, it doesn't seem like it would get any mainstream attention for how graphic it is, and now art is one of the biggest modern horror icons, and we're on the third movie, which outsold the second one, which was already a surprise hit at the box office, and they pulled it off yet again. So let's take a look back, and I mean all the way back to All Hallows Eve. Everything we're about to see is created by the director Damien Leone, and I'm really hoping it's Leone and not Leone because it looks like Sergio Leone, and I'm hoping that is in fact the case. So Damien Leone, I'm talking about all your movies today. Well, not all of them. All the ones that, well, have art. So every short in this, as well as the overall film, is all made by Damien Leone, and interestingly enough, when this was being made, the producers wanted it to be a thing where it's multiple directors for each short, but then he was like, hey, can I do this where I just introduced his character across all the shorts because I want to do something with him later? And that's what happened, and that's how we got to where we are now with the character of Art. The plot of All Hallows Eve is that on Halloween night, a woman's babysitting a couple kids, and when they came back from trick-or-treating, one of them got some strange VHS tapes in their bag, and they're wanting to check them out. They check out the first one together, but after seeing what it was, the babysitter decides that, you know what, you need to go off to bed. But out of curiosity, she watches the rest of the tapes on her own. And the way the anthology works is we're going back and forth between the babysitter and the kids and the tapes themselves. In total, there's only 3 shorts, 2 of which were made prior to this film even being thought of, and the third one being made for the sake of the movie itself. The first short, called The Ninth Circle, was released back in 2008. All Hallows Eve wasn't released until 2013. While the name seems kind of random, this first segment actually is the first appearance of Art. He looks a little different, but he more or less has the design that he's stuck with ever since, and it's a different actor, as we didn't get David Howard Thornton until the first feature-length Terrifier. But in this first movie and the shorts, it is the same actor portraying Art in the shorts and in the overall movie. It starts out watching a woman waiting for a train at the station, and Art appears. What ends up happening is she is drugged and kidnapped by Art, waking up in a strange room with a couple other women, and they're all chained up. So they're all panicking, and the new woman, the one from the station, is wondering, how come you two aren't doing anything? And what they're saying was, there was someone here before you, she's dead, we've tried everything, there's no way out. After a little struggling, panicking, they're eventually met with a strange killer. He's all deformed, fleshy, bloody, oozing kinda, and he starts hacking at everybody. In his attack though, he cuts the chain of the girl we've been following, and she's able to run away. She runs into a man with a shopping cart begging for help, but then he ends up being another one of the bad people, and he just takes her back. She's then taken somewhere else, and there's a pregnant woman there. There's a bunch of witches, I guess, demons, whatever you want them to be, they're supposed to be, and they're all surrounding these people, and they cut the baby out of the pregnant woman. So Satan himself is there, and he gets with the woman, not consensually. And that's the first short. So going back to the babysitter and the kids, they watched this one together, and she's like, you know what, that was too extreme, y'all go to bed. So she actually does force them to bed. They act like it was nothing. That was funny, that they've seen worse online. That's an ongoing joke they have. But then the girl ends up being scared, and later we see her actually ask her brothers, like, hey, can I sleep with you tonight or be in your bed with you? So they end up together by the end of the movie, but then the babysitter is left alone downstairs, and she's talking to her friend, talking about these weird tapes and everything, and she watches the other ones by herself. Now, the second segment, I don't really care for at all. It's not all that interesting, and I was wondering, what does this have to do with the other ones? And they just kind of shoehorned it in right at the end. This is the segment that was made specifically for the movie. This was not a pre-existing one. So this one follows a woman in a house all alone, and things start going wrong. Her phone malfunctions, her car messes up, and she's been terrified of this painting that her husband made, but he can't seem to recall actually painting it, stating himself apparently that he was in a trance, and when he came to, he just saw he had already painted this strange face. We don't get to see his painting as it's covered by a sheet, but that's the least of our worries right now, as because of all the other things going wrong, we're pretty sure someone's in the house. And what's in the house? You might be thinking to yourself, oh, Art's gonna be in there too, right? It's an alien? And it's one of those gray aliens. It's just a mask with a weird tech going in and out, and she gets chased around the house for a while. I was kind of bored by this one. It's generic, I guess. It's not really all that scary. It's like, yeah, we're getting the chase going on, everything's dark in the house, phone's not working, so then phone calls that aren't real, things like that. It's just kind of stupid, especially following up his first one, which was pretty freaky in itself, and then he did this in the middle that has nothing to do with Art, it seems. And it's not gory either, so that was another thing that you don't even get out of it. The woman actually does manage to hide for a while, but then her phone goes off, which is like, hey, dumbass, how come this thing's not on silent? The alien finds her, drags her off, and it's during this that we see the sheet come off the painting, and it's Art's face. And that's the strange painting. It's nothing to do with the rest of the short. It's just kind of there. He just kind of appears. I guess that's part of the joke, if that's what it's supposed to be, that oh, here's this weird thing, but here's the clown again. So at this point, we've seen the babysitter. She's been on the phone with her friend, kind of like the girl in the movie. It's saying it's like all this weird stuff's going on, the stuff the kids were saying about having seen worse. Friend even goes like, surprising that you're even willing to babysit at all, but it's for a good friend there, so you know, it's like there's some reason behind it. And well, we got one more short, and this one is actually the first thing to be called Terrifier, and this came out in 2011, so 2 years prior to this anthology. So this short is absolutely like a demo of what we would get later on in Terrifier, the feature-length film. We're following a woman going to a gas station. She's on gas, she just needs to get filled up. She meets with the gas attendant after he kicks out a clown that apparently had just smeared crap all over the walls. We get a little back and forth between the woman and the attendant. She's needing directions on where to go, and he's helping her out, loading her up and everything. You know, it seems like they're being a little flirty maybe, but then he has to step away as they hear a mysterious noise, and then after a while, he doesn't come back. After he hadn't returned for a while, she was getting concerned, so she walked in to see what was going on and finds the clown chopping up the man. And Art is using a hacksaw to do all this, something that does appear in the feature length. She of course gets terrified and runs off into her car and speeds off, calling the cops saying she just witnessed a murder. She makes some good distance for a while, but then I can't even remember why. Like, yeah, she's panicking and everything, but it's like, you're already driving, the dude's not like in your car or anything, but she's actively being chased by him. She's driving off and she has upon another car that's pulled over on the side of the road. She goes and checks it out. There's a woman lurched over the steering wheel, and she's trying to cry for help, knocking on her window and everything. She eventually gets in, lifts the woman's head up, face is gone. So she freaks out, runs off, tries to drive away. In that time though, Art manages to get in the back seat and tries to suffocate her with a piece of cellophane from the back seat. She does manage to escape, getting out of the car and running into a nearby shed. Art ends up digging his way under into the shed, going after her. He has this weird whip that she uses and starts slashing her with it, but she manages to get a hold of a scalpel and stabs him in the eye. She even gets him with a knife, and then in this, she's able to escape yet again, and she is then picked up by a man driving by. So she's trying to have him taken to a police station, but then Art's falling behind in a car of his own. Eventually, he catches up and shoots the driver. This causes the car to crash, and then we cut to the woman waking up somewhere else. She's tied down and we're cutting back and forth. We see Art and then we're seeing the wounds on her body, and then at the end we get a full shot. We see that Art has amputated all of her limbs, carved insults into her body, and cut off her breast. It is a very freaky and disgusting visual. We don't see it happen, but we see the aftermath when she's all cleaned up and like sewn up and stuff. It's pretty nasty. This last one really freaks out the babysitter, so she finally turns off the TV, but when she goes to take out the tape, she realizes it's the living room on the screen. She's seeing herself from, I guess, the perspective of the TV itself. And she's seeing behind her, the clown is back there, but every time she turns around, there's no one there. She's freaking out, trying to take out the tape, and eventually when she finally does get it out, she destroys it. But then she starts hearing screaming from upstairs. What ends up happening, she goes upstairs and sees Art up there, like laughing at her. You know, he doesn't actually talk or anything, but he's mocking her and gesturing over to the room. She does go in and sees the two kids decapitated, just their heads on the bed. And then written in blood on the wall, Art. And that's All Hallows Eve. Now, I don't hate this short or anything. It's fun enough. I think that middle segment kind of ruins it for me. The acting of the babysitter and the kids, it's like, okay, you found these people. They're not great actors or anything, but they're serviceable enough for what we're getting. It does have that nice creepy vibe. It definitely feels like a good old horror movie. And the segments of the Ninth Circle and Terrifier itself, I think were actually pretty good, especially more so Terrifier, because that is eventually what goes into being its own film franchise. As a first film and introduction to Art, I actually think it's pretty good, but it's not amazing by any means. The acting, again, kind of all over the place. Story-wise, it does its job overall. I think it gets a 5. Nothing great. The gore effects when they're there are excellent. Hey, what the hell? The only goofy looking things was maybe the heads on the bed. They didn't quite look right, but you know, it's pretty budget, I imagine, is what he was working with, but it's still pretty cool. Good introduction. And now on to the first film that everybody knows, Terrifier. Now going forward 3 years to 2016, we get the first feature-length film dedicated to Art. Not an anthology like All Hallows Eve, but a standalone feature. There's no going back and forth between segments or anything. This is one full-fledged story all of its own. This first movie gained a pretty decent cult following, which is what eventually led to the sequels we now have. Honestly, I kind of thought it would just stay as its like own little niche thing. Maybe he'd do a couple more low-budget ones because he wanted to keep the character going. I never really expected it to go off the way it did. This first film, it was funded through crowdfunding on Indiegogo and actually fell short of its goal, but then he had a producer come in and they actually filled out the rest. And this was made on a pretty modest budget of $35,000. And if you don't know movie making, that is actually very, very cheap. So what we get based on that budget is actually pretty impressive, but I still have my gripes with this movie. The first time I watched it, I honestly ended up not even liking it that much, really only thinking of one certain death scene that we'll get to later. That was kind of about it. I thought the characters weren't all that interesting. It was nice that it was a short movie. It just felt kind of long because I think between the scary moments, he didn't really know how to direct that part. And that's not like an insult or anything. I think that is very different things to make, is scary scenes versus just dialogue and narrative. And seeing as this was his first feature length dedicated to one thing, it was definitely a different and new task for him. Something else noteworthy about this is our introduction to David Howard Thornton, which in the credits actually says introduces, meaning this was his first big role. Our show opens with a TV host speaking to one of the survivors of Art's attacks. A woman that, it gets revealed, has a very disfigured face. We don't know who this is just yet, but then we see some aftermath of the interview. It is said they saw the killer die. Art's actually watching this, hearing that, well, that he supposedly died. Well, here he is watching it, destroys his TV, fills up his bag. We then go back to the studio. We hear the woman talking about the show, how successful this is gonna be, kind of insulting the disfigured woman, the one that was attacked by this vicious killer and managed to survive and tell the tale. Yeah, pretty messed up. She's overhearing this, and the woman herself, well, I don't think she took too kindly to it. The disfigured woman comes in, rips off the host's face, essentially. Good effects. And then we're now off to the main part of our movie. We actually get to see Art like kind of prepping himself, doing his whole look, getting his weapons ready. It's a pretty cool sequence we're getting for an opening. We now have two friends, Tara and Dawn, out on Halloween night, and well, one of them is very drunk. Right now they're just trying to, I guess, find a way home, but first they want to grab something to eat. The two girls find their way to a pizzeria, but the clown ended up following them there. He sits across from them and just keeps staring specifically at Tara. When we first see him, he seems a little more playful, but now he's just kind of being freaky. The friend, Dawn, she goes and takes a couple selfies with Art, kind of forcing him to do it, accidentally knocks off, I think, the hat, and then that gets him a little upset. He finally starts reacting. And she's like, oh, sorry, goes back to her table. He does at one point get up, gets a little toy from, you know, those little quarter ball things you can do where it's just a cheap little thing, you twist it, get the little pop out toy. He does that, gets a little ring, and goes over and puts it on Tara. So he's starting off being very playful, but then he's being also very creepy, just kind of staring, sitting there menacingly. Eventually Art goes off to the bathroom, and then we see the owner of the place kicks out Art furious, throwing out his stuff and everything, saying, you don't come back here. He smeared crap all over the walls. I really want to know why Damien Leone really insisted on Art being a crap smearer. I feel like that's a thing I encounter in like public gas station bathrooms and schools back when I was like in middle school and elementary. I really don't understand how there's anyone in the world that does that. So it makes sense that he has this creepy guy do it. The girls leave and discover that the tires on their car have been slashed. Tara calls up her sister, Victoria, asking for a ride. She's a little reluctant at first. She's at college doing her thing, but then her roommate comes in making out with her boyfriend. She's like, you know what? I need to get out of here. So she goes to go get them. Within this time, Art returns to the pizzeria and kills the two guys inside. We see the guy that was, I guess the other guy was the cook. We see him cleaning the bathroom, complaining to his boss. He's like, I better get paid extra for this. I'm supposed to be the guy handling the food and everything, but he's not getting a response back. He goes out and sees on the counter the head of his boss treated like a jack-o'-lantern. He tries to call for help, but is then killed by Art anyways. He gets chopped up, ripped apart. While waiting around, they're outside of an apartment building, and a worker comes out. You know, the bald guy jumpsuit, the normal creepy guy in any other movie. But Tara really needs to go to the bathroom, so she asks him, like, hey, is there a bathroom I can go use? And he's like, sure, just make it quick. I really shouldn't be letting you in, but it's an emergency, fine. The place is pretty run down. He's actually a pest control worker that was about to bug bomb the whole place. So she gets in, does her business, and she comes out and encounters a homeless lady carrying around a doll that she's saying is her baby. She's freaked out by her. She's trying to very kindly say, it's like, yeah, great meeting you, but I need to get out of here. I gotta go, sorry. While out waiting, Dawn hears on the radio that there's a clown on the loose that's been murdering people. And then when she hears a description of it, she looks back at the picture she took, realizing, holy crap, that guy was taking selfies with. It's the killer. She's freaking out, and then she is attacked by Art. At this point, we do not see what happens to her. We cut back to Tara and her trying to get away from him. She's pretty much stuck in this apartment complex being chased around by Art. Eventually, he does get her and drugs her. She wakes up bound to a chair, and this is when we see one of the most infamous killing scenes to pretty much ever be in any slasher. Dawn is tied up, hanging upside down, completely naked, and then Art just decides to go right down the middle while she's still alive. Hacksaw. It's a really messed up scene, very gory, and I think this probably is the standout, not just for this movie, but possibly even the franchise. This is a very iconic moment for him, and this is one of those moments where I'm wondering, how did this end up becoming part of something so popular? It is very graphic, more so than a lot of other things, so it really like sticks with you and stands out. Tara actually manages to escape, beats up Art and everything, and when she thinks she's finally got the advantage, Art decides to pull a sneaky and whips out a pistol. And this is one of the lamer deaths because she just gets shot to death. Like, he shoots her once to get her down and then just kind of unloads the thing in her. Not as creative or interesting, but they still make it fairly graphic with, like, you know, the blood splats and all that. Art decides he needs to clear house, and he runs into the worker, and he ends up smashing him on the head and destroying the phone he has. We didn't see that Art runs into the homeless woman from earlier. He has taken the doll and is cradling it, and she's trying to get her baby back. Eventually what ends up happening, she starts kind of like cradling Art instead, like holding him, and he's acting like a crying child. It's a weird scene. In this time, Victoria, the sister, she finally makes it to this apartment and goes in looking for her. She finds a woman laying on the floor, which ends up being the mutilated homeless lady. Art is wearing her hair as well as her breast. So they strip down, acting like a dead body, and then when Victoria discovers her sister dead on the other side of the room, that's when he gets up and starts chasing her. So Victoria finds the guy that was working with our pest control guy from earlier. He ends up dead though. But he eventually does run into the guy from earlier. Turns out he wasn't killed, he was just knocked out. And he was able to call for help, and they're running away together for a little while. He actually manages to knock out Art for a bit, but then, you know, he dies anyways. So now it's just Victoria being chased around by Art the rest of the movie. What's happening? Victoria's run over with a car, and then Art starts eating her face. This is how we get our disfigured woman from the beginning. The police do arrive, they have guns drawn telling him to put his hands up, but Art is not raising his other hand. As they keep shouting at him to do so, what he's actually doing is drawing a gun from his leg. Instead of shooting the cops, he shoots himself. So now it looks like everything's over. But then when we're at the morgue, we're talking about all the bodies found and how this girl with her face being eaten off, but it turns out she was still alive. They bring in the killer who supposedly killed himself right on the spot, but then when they bring him onto the operating table, he gets up and attacks the coroner. I think I enjoyed it a little more on my second watch. It is nice that the runtime is only 85 minutes, so there's not really anything that's dragged out in this. It's just, I don't know, I didn't really feel much, you know. I can't even think of what would have really made this movie better, because I think the actors themselves do fine. I don't think the pacing is super off or anything. It's just, I don't know. It is what it is. It feels mostly like a showcase for the gore effects, which when it comes to the actual chases and the murders themselves, I think Damien Leone, that's where he works best. It's like when you have directors that make action movies. Their action scenes are great, but that in-between of just the dialogue and stuff, it's kind of, whatever. It connects everything together, but I'm not really thinking about it. So it's nothing amazing. There's no great characters, but I do think Tara, I actually really liked her, and I don't know. I was thinking about this after. In an alternate universe, I think she could have been Sydney in Scream. Like, I think that actress, she actually did pretty good. Victoria also did pretty good herself, but seeing as she wasn't in the bulk of the movie, we couldn't really see how much she could have pulled off as the final girl type. And it was pretty cool having the twist of the false final girl, because you think, oh, Tara's actually gonna make it, but then no, she gets shot to death. So it does have a lot going for it, but overall, I think I still really only give this a 5, just because outside of the violence, I'm just kind of okay with it. Seriously, jeez. It's not offensively bad or anything, but I don't really see myself rewatching this too often. And now we're on to the first big hit, and I mean, like, this thing succeeded way more than I think it had any business doing so. Terrifier 2. So while this film was in fact made on a bigger budget than the first movie, his goal was to raise $50,000 for the film. Well, they exceeded that and actually managed to get $250,000. So this ended up being a much bigger budget from the first movie. Because we're talking $35,000 to $250,000, that's a lot. And to top it off, when it released to theaters, it actually managed to pull millions. On its debut, it made $805,000, so well over its budget, earning quite a bit back. And then the following, it made $1 million. So that's pretty big for a movie, not just, you know, this weird cult gory thing, but something that was also made on a really small indie budget. Very cool. So now let's talk about the actual movie. I didn't know this part, I'm reading about this right now. So apparently after he had made that first short, The Ninth Circle, he wanted to do something following an angelic heroine, that's how I'll word it. Yeah, he said the concept of the planned film focused heavily on an angel-dressed heroine ultimately fell apart. And he ends up reusing this in Terrifier 2. And this is where some people have some critiques on this movie, we'll get to that obviously. But this film, the script was done in a way to have a stronger character focus, because that seemed to be the biggest critique of the first movie, was that there wasn't too much of a narrative. Which I'll say fair, but I mean there was one, but the narrative itself was just the guy killing these random people he happened upon. I forget I can hear stuff outside really like that. We pick up pretty much right where the first movie ends, with Art waking up on the table and killing the coroner. He goes to a laundromat to clean up his clothes, and he sees this little girl running around in a very similar outfit. Someone else at the laundromat sees Art, but they don't see the girl. He ends up dead. We then cut to a year later, so we're getting to the next Halloween, and we meet with our new heroine, Sienna. And I say heroine, well, because this is going to be our main girl. You know, we need our hero girl in our slasher film. She's putting together her own costume, a Valkyrie that was designed by her father, who is actually now dead. Her younger brother, Jonathan, has this weird obsession with art and has tons of drawings and is looking at all sorts of stuff about him, as it seems that the set of murders became pretty infamous. This obsession coming from the fact that their deceased father actually had a sketchbook full of drawings of art. Not just art, but Art the Clown. We get an interesting dream sequence where Sienna has a nightmare about a show called The Clown Cafe. She's trying to get away from things, get freakier, you know, it's supposed to look like one of those weird kids shows where they have the character mascots, like all the kids playing around. But eventually comes down to Art killing everybody in the dream and chasing her around and has a flamethrower. And then she ends up being able to protect herself with a sword. The sword that she's going to use for her costume. When she wakes up, she finds that her dresser is burned where the sword is. Everything is burnt, but the sword itself is perfectly fine. And then that following day is Halloween. Jonathan's at school and he sees Art and the pale girl messing with the dead possum. Someone catches them, but they don't see Art and the girl. They see Jonathan, saying it was him being a little freak messing with this dead thing. Sienna has a panic attack when she's out with their friends and they're talking about the mutilation of the talk show host by the disfigured woman in the first movie. They end up going to a Halloween shop where they encounter Art. He's just kind of, you know, walking around goofing off, but he's, you know, a little freaky. And seeing as they're seeing a guy that's dressed as someone that actually went around and killed people, that's pretty messed up. But this bit reminds me a lot of Scream, and I'm sure Damien Leone is inspired a good amount by it. Because we're seeing the real set of murders and then people being obsessed with it after the fact, to the point where the killer turns into a character. It's not to the point where it's like there's an in-world movie or anything like that, but that's a similarity that I see, which is something I actually really like, because Scream is one of my favorite series. Don't ask me about the recent sequels though. I like the way this person wrote this next part. This is on the Wikipedia. They say, Art kills the shop vendor, and that night he breaks into Allie's home, so one of the friends, and tortures her to pass the time. And that's another scene that got pretty infamous pretty much immediately. So he does kill the worker at the store, and then he follows the other girl home, breaks in, and he skins her and like pours salt all over everything, ripping her apart. It's pretty nasty. Like, this is a really gross scene. So it was nice seeing that even though he's like, okay, I'm making a bigger movie, I need to be even more gross this time. So interesting move on his part that actually works in his favor. Again, I'm still surprised this series is as big as it is now. So Jonathan, the little brother, he shows Sienna and their mom the father's sketchbook. He's showing everything about Art and all the news clippings, and he's talking about that little pale girl. It seems that she actually bears resemblance to one of Art's first victims. He thinks that their dad actually knew how to stop Art and that the sword was gifted to Sienna for a reason, and that is what's needed to stop him. Sienna leaves for her party, and then Jonathan is... It says he flees after the mom abuses him. I don't exactly remember how... Did she have to beat him, does she? Or does she just yell at him? Either way, he runs off, you know, because like, he's like, I can't deal with this. He runs away. Art comes. Mom's dead now. She just got shot. When Jonathan eventually comes back, Art kidnaps him and steals Sienna's sword. Sienna's at the party with her other friend, Brooke. Again, I never remember people's names. This is why I need to have like either the IMDb or some sort of plot description next to me. Brooke. That's the friend that still has her skin. She actually spikes Sienna's drink, which really uncool because she didn't even ask her, like, hey, can we do this together? No, she just kind of does it, and this triggers another panic attack for Sienna. Brooke's boyfriend's driving them home, but then they get lured into an old attraction called the Terrifier at an abandoned carnival. So Sienna's going inside, Jonathan's in there with the clown and everything. Outside in the car, the boyfriend gets murdered. The friend, she ends up getting chased inside to the park as well, and Art ends up killing her. Sienna happens upon her and is knocked out. And the thing that's different about Art, I didn't really say it in the first movie, but I'll say it more so in this one just because he has a few more moments in it and we've gotten to know him pretty well. Art doesn't just kill people. He wants them to suffer when he does it. When you watch these other slasher villains, they're kind of just going for the kill. Like, yeah, there's some where their whole objective is torture. Some people might say something like Jigsaw. I don't think Jigsaw's on that same plane. Art wants people to suffer. The way he kills is in a way that they're feeling the pain the entire time, and then when they're finally dead, he's not done. He wants to mutilate them after and essentially make art out of the corpses. He sees it as fun. He wants to see what's the craziest thing he can do, so he can try to top himself each kill. So each kill is very much a theatrical piece. And it's never like, even when someone gets beaten to death, it's always like in a way, it's like, oh, I crushed your leg. Oh, I crushed this. Now this is falling off. Okay, now I'll do the final blow. It's always long, drawn out, messed up. So it's always kind of a disappointment in a way when he just shoots somebody. So Sienna comes to and finds Art holding a scalpel to Jonathan. They start trying to attack him with his own weapons, but then they realize this guy can't die. And they're just getting tired, but he's perfectly fine because he's this immortal entity and he's not going to get tired. At this point in the movie, so everything I'm saying, it's being said pretty fast, but this movie is 2.5 hours. Pretty much the rest of this is that last half hour. And the whole movie, it does feel a little long at parts, but this bit at the end absolutely feels dragged out and could have been paced faster. At this point, Sienna gets stabbed by the sword and ends up in the clown cafe from her dream. She dies, but then is magically resurrected by the sword. So it's all this weird magic crap, and this is another thing people said, it's like, okay, that was weird, and people weren't really digging that. It was a little too much of this all of a sudden at the end. It's like, okay, it was one thing for the guy to have visions and all this and say, all right, Art's a demon. And this was like, I don't know, a sword from heaven. Something weird, right? But then we just see it happen, this weird dreamlike visuals of her being resurrected in this thing of water. It's all very strange and so sudden after this weird, fairly dragged out chase sequence that's just kind of going on. After her resurrection, she has her sword. Sienna decapitates Art while he's biting at Jonathan's calves. So the little clown girl, she comes and takes Art's head and leaves. So we get credits and everything, but there's actually a mid-credit scene. This is the only movie so far in the series, including 3, to have an after-credit scene of any sort. We're at an insane asylum. What are they supposed to actually be called now? I'm just gonna stick with that. We see a worker, they're watching TV, there's like a little gross Halloween platter they got going on and everything, and then we see one of the patients inside. Turns out this is where they're keeping Victoria, the girl that got disfigured in the first movie. She's writing Vicky plus Art on the wall and lots of obscenities all over the place, and it's all written with her own blood. She then gives birth to Art's head, and it's not like it just came out. No, the head's alive. I'm guessing it's gonna be like his new head to the decapitated body or something, and that is the end of Terrifier 2. I do think this is definitely a huge step up from the first movie. I like the weird character story he made up. I do think, though, it is too long. The way the magic stuff came in is very odd. It doesn't feel right. It's a little too goofy for everything else we were getting. The kills themselves, excellently gory and all that. It's definitely a huge leap from the first movie. I think he definitely made a lot of improvements in this one. I'm not even going to tie that to budget. I think just with his overall creativity and wanting to add a character-driven narrative, it's excellent. He did a great job. But because of that weird dragged-out pace that it feels like, and with that 2.5-hour runtime, I give it a 7 out of 10. I almost gave it an 8 by the time I was finishing, but that last half hour, it was a bit much. Why? And then we're on to 3, and when I saw the reveal for it and everything, that poster I made of Archer as Santa, I was pretty excited, so let's do this. One more movie. So Terrifier 3, I was pretty excited for it when I saw that little promo with Archer as Santa and everything. I was really hoping I could find a shirt of that, but I didn't find one. Now this movie had an even bigger budget than the last one. How much bigger? $2 million. And apparently they've already made over $40 million back. And that's pretty amazing for what I thought would just stay this weird little cult thing. And the fact that it's a multi-million-dollar franchise now, that's pretty impressive for what Terrifier is. And because of the success of 2, there was actually major studios trying to get the rights to Terrifier to produce the sequel. And Damien Loney, he was like, you know what, no thanks. Because he was afraid that whatever the studio he went with, they wouldn't let him do what he wanted to do. Because as you know, his films are pretty extreme. And there's a pretty good chance, like let's say like Universal picked him up or something, they might not let him go too far in the movies. Or like if even Lionsgate, and I think Lionsgate might have actually been pretty good because you know they got Saw and everything like that. They probably would have let him do a little more. But it's not so much what happens, but also who it happens to, as we're about to talk about right now. So I thought the opening of this movie was kind of weird, because the very opening has little to do with the rest of the movie. It more or less sets the tone, I guess. We start with a little girl who just got waken up because she heard something on the roof. She goes to tell mom and dad. Dad has to work in the morning, he doesn't want to deal with it, makes it mom's problem. So she tells her story, it's like, oh, so it's close to Christmas. It's probably just one of the elves being sure the house is ready for Santa to come on Christmas Eve. So the girl's fine with it, but then she's pretty sure that Santa's in the house. So she goes to try to tell her brother. He's like, leave me alone, I'm trying to sleep. So she goes down herself to see Santa. Or wait a minute, that doesn't look right. And as we know, that's Art dressed as Santa. And he goes upstairs with an axe. The girl sees this happening. She remains quiet, amazingly enough, and runs off and hides. He goes upstairs, we hear him go in. He goes upstairs and he goes into the boys' room first. We hear him say, it's like, I told you to leave me alone, only to be cut off by the axe. We hear the axe strikes, we hear the boy just never said anything else after that, and then Art comes out of the room with the bloody axe. He then goes into the parents' room where they're both laying in bed. He goes after the dad first, repeatedly striking him with the axe, mostly like in the torso. And the wife's wondering, like, what's going on? What are you doing? And she wakes up, realizes she has blood on her, looks over. Husband's getting hacked up right next to her. She does manage to run away. She's trying to get the kids, going into the girls' room, seeing that she's not even in there, and then she goes to the boys' room to find him, well, chopped up. She actually manages to make it to the door, but because she had to go back down and lock it earlier, she was in a panic, didn't quite unlock it to get the door open. Art catches up and axes her to death too. He cleans up his mess, he has some milk and cookies, and even like wipes off the plates. He's not that messy apparently. But then he hears a little something. The little girl hid in one of the cabinets. And we don't see what happens, but we know what's gonna happen. So we get our title, and then it's on to the real opening, which we cut back to 5 years earlier, which apparently 5 years earlier is where 2 ended. I don't know how or why they decided to make a time jump like that. A little weird, but okay, go off, I guess. There's a cop investigating where the last murders at the end of 2 happened. He finds Art's headless body, calls it in, but then the unexpected happens. The decapitated body attacks him, kills him, and then takes his head to wear it around for a while. Victoria, she ends up breaking... So Victoria, back in the insane asylum, I'm just gonna call it that, she breaks out, kills the orderly, and then takes the newly born head to give it to the body. They end up going into this abandoned house for whatever reason. Art goes and sits in a chair in an attic, like staring out a window. Victoria, she gets in a bathtub, gets a piece of glass, cuts herself and bleeds out just sitting there. So now we're back 5 years later, so present day now. Sienna's being released from a mental health care center. She's going to be living with her aunt and uncle. She's getting picked up that day, and it's just in time for Christmas. Also there is her little cousin Gabby, who's apparently obsessed with her. But she doesn't really have any idea of what exactly happened to her and why she had to be away. And just some character traits, so I don't have to worry about them later. Gabby is also known as being a bit of a snoop and is pretty nosy. And this is gonna play some pretty big stuff later. Sienna has some survivor's guilt, and she keeps having visions of her bloody dead friend, the one that went with her into the carnival. This makes up most of the little episodes she has, on top of just seeing Art himself or something. That this is something that happens a few times before we really get into the main part of the movie. She's also having a hard time trying to reconnect with Jonathan, as he's now off at college and he seems to be doing things on his own. He has a roommate whose girlfriend actually is the host of a true crime podcast, and she's very interested in the murders that, well, he survived. She's trying to get an interview with him. He's like, I don't really want to. Nice meeting you though, whatever. And this is going to be kind of important for later too. We're then back at the abandoned house where there's a couple demolition workers going to check out the place before tearing it down. The boss, I'm going to call him the boss because it seems like he's in charge of it, is making fun of the other guy because he's very much scared to even go in this place. He's like, I hate places like this. He even feeds him a fake story about kids being murdered or whatever. And he's like, I'm screwing with you, let's just do our job, get the hell out of here. So the boss, he finds Victoria in the tub and he's like, holy crap, I found a dead body. Let me get pictures of this. The other guy, however, found Art, thinking, I don't know why his initial thought is like, there's some dude sitting here versus there's a really creepy looking mannequin covered in cobwebs right now. So he's pretty freaked out. The other guy though, he's the one that's pretty sure he just found a dead body that's been rotting for who knows how long. He's trying to get pictures of it, trying to call the other guy in. Gets slashed by that piece of glass that she had cut herself with. Art gets up, kills the other guy, and Victoria, she comes and watches, pleasuring herself with the glass. All the while the guy's getting skinned and ripped apart. We see Victoria starts making herself her own little outfit, and then Art goes out. He's now gonna go get himself his Santa costume. We do a cut to a bar where we see a Santa, a bartender, and then I guess a regular. And the patron at the bar, I had to look and I was like, wait a minute, that's freaking Clint Howard. And if you don't know, that's the guy that's like the yes man for the mayor in How the Grinch Stole Christmas with Jim Carrey. I just thought it was really funny just seeing him kind of pop up like that. He has a very, distinct face. Art comes in after Santa's having fun with somebody else, they leave, and so now it's Art and the 3 dudes. He's coming in all playful, like he's super excited to see Santa, like, it looks like he's having a fun time, and that's something I really like, not just about Art, but like the actor portraying him. David Howard Thornton does a great job being very expressive for Art. It adds a lot of character to him before he goes off and becomes a very mean-spirited killer. And I think that's the best thing to call him, because he's having all this fun and then he becomes very mean and then very evil. So it starts out all playful. He's wanting to just, hang out with Santa, just hang out with him, goof around, show him like what his clowniness is gonna be like. Because he brought that little bag with him, like he likes to drag around. He pulls out the little horn, honks it, sits in Santa's lap, and then he pees. He didn't smear crap this time, I'll give him that, but you peed on Santa, dude. Like, come on. So of course they're pretty pissed. And then they try to kick him out and everything. Well, Art's pretty upset by that now. He pulls out the gun, shoots the other patron there and the bartender, leaving Santa to get the worst treatment of them all. We saw earlier he was actually cooking up a little something. He made a little liquid nitrogen. I'm gonna call it a blaster. It looks like a fire extinguisher, but it's shooting liquid nitrogen. He had tested it on some rats and just smacked the things when they were frozen, their guts flying. Yeah, gross. He does it to Santa. He does it to his legs, his face, and it gets to a point like the face is just gone, but the guy's still alive. He's like pleading, begging for his life and everything, and then it gets to the point where he can't say anything anymore, but he's still very aware of what's happening. Art even mocks him further by stuffing a carrot in his nose like he's a snowman. It's a scene. And this is of course how he gets his outfit. He even takes the dude's beard, and I think he like sewed it to himself or something weird. I don't know. I'd have to get a better look at that again to confirm that. So before I talk about this next bit, there's some parts where like Sienna's been keeping a diary of everything that happened to her that she keeps to herself. She doesn't show this to anybody. Gabby being nosy, she reads some of it herself. Sienna catches her and she's like, promise me you're not gonna read this again. So she got to read part of it and she tells us like, it's just like dreams I had. It's not real. Don't think about that. It's going to be a point later where the diary's going to come back up. Santa and Gabby go to the mall to do some Christmas shopping. Santa thinks she has another episode as she sees what looks like Art in a Santa outfit walk by the store that they are currently browsing in. She doesn't make anything of it and she also doesn't tell anybody about it. But as it turns out, Art really is there. She just doesn't know that yet. But the interesting thing about this is, would you really see something that you had seen before different? Like, I don't think if I were to have seen this killer, if I were having episodes, I don't think I would just magically make up the fact he's in a Santa outfit. I think she should have pursued that maybe a little more in the moment. But perhaps it was for the best that she didn't. Because it's a mall, of course, there's an area where people can go take pictures of Santa. The Santa that's there, though, he went to go take a break. Art sees an opportunity and takes his own little bag of goodies there and is actually beginning to give out toys to all the kids there waiting. Apparently, none of the kids question why Santa looks like that, because Art's face isn't covered by the beard. It's like down here, so his face is still very much in view. So there's a creepy clown giving out presents and he's in a Santa costume. But the kids don't care, they're getting free crap. So all the kids are excited, they're all getting toys, but then there's one that's different and this boy really wants to know. There's one that is wrapped and there's one boy trying to open it. And all the while he's doing that, mom's calling, he's like, where are you? Come back, get over here. And then he opens it up, it's a bomb. So very different for Art, but he's able to kill a lot more people that way. And it's pretty messed up that it was also a kid that set it off and was the first to get blown up. So it's after this, Sienna goes to see Jonathan at the university, because it's the only person that she can really tell these sort of things to and really get a discussion out of it. So they're talking about it, and of course that girlfriend from earlier, the roommates, she comes in and is like, oh my god, it's you. And she's trying to pressure them into doing an interview for her podcast. And she really doesn't want to do it, and eventually ends up lashing out at her. Which, of course, the girl's like, oh, it can help you cope, or like, what are you doing to help, like, get over it? Well, not talking to people like you that are obsessed with my misfortunes, so deserved getting yelled at. Which realistically, I think more people need to get punched in the face, honestly. At least a slap, something. Oh, come on. Oh! Seriously, I still gotta finish the video. Ugh. Santa and Jonathan, they do go off and somewhere else where a little more private. They get to talk a little more, and she talks about how Jonathan himself used to write letters to when she was first sent to the mental health center. He was able to find that, well, demons could come back if there's some sort of host. So how he saw Victoria, birth the new head, and that there was only really one way to stop him. So she's talking about how she's planning to go get the sword back that she had gotten before to try to finish him off yet again. So when Sienna does get home, she has a little present. That's what's holding the sword. Her hands are all dirty and everything. And Gabby is the one that sees her, and she's like, well, let's just keep this little secret. She just says, I fell. That's how she explains the dirt away. Back at the university, Art's there now. He's listening to the roommate and the girlfriend talking about Sienna and Art, and how she's saying, I just really want to know, what it's like to feel that terror, I just really want to know how it feels, that terror, and what it's like to be near someone like that, what they smell like and stuff, being really weird. And the boyfriend's like, it sounds like you just want to fuck him, dude. She's like, no, I don't. And what's funny is we're cutting back and forth. Art's like, And then he's just, disappointed. He's like, he could have gotten a little something maybe. Does he even care about that though? Like, realistically, does he actually care about that? Maybe he just liked the attention. Eventually this leads to them being in the showers. They're having sex in the shower. Art's there. And he chainsaws both of them. The girl gets pretty messed up, losing her face and everything. The whole like sitting there, just witnessing everything, but can't do anything about it. In the shower. The boyfriend was able to get a little bit away, but he was cutting away that his legs were messed up, so he's just dragging himself across the floor. We get pretty similar to the hacksaw treatment of the girl in the first movie. Chainsaw all the way up. And thank you, Damien Leone, for showing me bloody dick and balls. That was very cool, dude. And this is where we get Art's little blood angel thing. And there's even a little tune playing over this moment about Art trying to top his own kills and how it's Christmas, in the tune of a Christmas style song. So the explosion at the mall ends up appearing on the news, and Sienna finds out about it, and she's freaking out. She's like, holy crap, this had to have been him. And the guy talking about it on the news, the bystander they get, it's freaking Tom Savini. Well, that was pretty cool too, seeing him pop up. I was like, maybe he wasn't involved with the gore, but the fact that like one of the original like OG gore effects guys was in this, pretty nice. That's very cool. So then because of this leads to Sienna panicking and saying, we need Jonathan here. He can't be by himself. So the uncle, he actually goes off to go pick him up. I don't remember if this is here, but I'm gonna tell it here just for the sake of the timeline. She finds out that Gabby had read the rest of her diary essentially. And so she's pretty mad about that, but then Gabby seems like she's kind of on board with it. She's okay with it. And something important that we see, we don't know what happens though, is that after the present is stowed away, because again, Gabby's nosy, we are shown that she goes downstairs to presumably go take a look at it, but we don't see what becomes of that, at least not just yet. We actually see at the point, I don't remember if it's here exactly, but Jonathan's actually watching part of the podcast. And again, I can't remember if this is before or after the girl got killed in the shower. But she's defending Sienna, saying, like, oh yeah, she's like the hero, the one that killed the killer. But then the other girl, the other host of the podcast, saying, it's like, no, I'm pretty sure it was her, because they never found this killer clown's body, whoever he is. So it's like a whole thing, and he's just watching that, and probably pretty glad he ended up not doing the show. And what's funny is he was supposed to be at this party going on, but he had fallen asleep, and he gets the call that it's like, hey, we're picking you up, you're going. So when the uncle does get there, he's trying to call Jonathan out, saying, he's like, hey, I'm here. And then Jonathan's on the phone, but he doesn't sound quite right. We don't really see anything happen, but we're pretty sure they're both getting snatched up by Art and Victoria. We're now back at the house. Sienna goes downstairs only to find Art and Victoria, and she's now in her own little clown outfit. She gets knocked out by a mallet. When she comes to, she's tied up. Across from her is her aunt, who's also tied up in her own chair, and then on the wall is the uncle's body, kind of crucified, but it's missing its head. It is now a topper for the Christmas tree. Victoria then reveals that in between them, under this little sheet, is a skinless head, who she tells them is Gabby, because we didn't see her when she woke up, so I guess the head's gotta be her. And to top it off, it's being eaten by rats. So then the next step, well, we gotta kill the aunt too, because we gotta make Sienna feel like a helpless loser. Art like jams this, I'm assuming it's like a glass tube or something, into the aunt's mouth, and it's just like too big, so it's like popping open the jaw, hammering it in further, and then he drops a rat in, lights it on fire, and it's like tearing her up on the inside, slits the throat, and the rat runs out. Really disgusting, and I'm pretty sure he just read about that weird medieval torture method they would do, where I think it was like they would put a bucket and make it really hot so the rat would try to burrow out. Pretty sure that's what they were going for. So Art comes out with Gabby. He's like, oh well, no, that head wasn't her. Actually, it's Jonathan's. I kind of refuse to believe that's actually his, because it just seems so sudden they would kill off a potentially major character. I mean, they probably did though, like for the sake of the shock of it too, but I don't know. I didn't really like the way that was just kind of like stuck in there like that. So then Art brings in Gabby, revealing it's like, well, that's just some head. She's actually right here, because we wanted to kill her right in front of you. Victoria had this little crown of thorns that she was wearing, like Jesus's, because, you can't be evil without mocking Jesus. Puts it on Sienna, jamming it on, making her bleed. But then Gabby feels us like, you never even got to open my Christmas present. Alluding to the one that Sienna had left, and, well, she must have figured out what's in there. So then they decide, it's like, you know what, you're right, that's not fair. They're gonna let Sienna open the present, but not before smashing her hand, so it's a little difficult for her. She does get it open, and well, she loves the thing. It's the best gift she could have ever gotten. Decapitates Victoria. And then like her body is like melting away. It's really weird. It's just breaking down, and from what we see later, apparently she's very acidic. Just straight up made of acid. This then leads into a fight with Art, and honestly, I feel like it could have been shot and choreographed a little better. It's a lot of just them getting thrown around back and forth, sword against chainsaw that It eventually ends with Art getting pinned against a wall with the sword through his chest. But then where Victoria died, it like melted away the floor, opened a portal to what I can assume is hell. And Gabby's falling in, barely holding on. Of all things in the world she could have decided to do, she has the clown pinned, but she needs to go save Gabby. She takes the sword out of Art to use it to pull her up, so she's grabbing the blade and having Gabby grab for the handle, which, you know, she's a little girl, and I guess she thinks she's too weak, so she's not even really trying for it. She loses her grip. Gabby falls down into the hole along with the sword, and then the portal closes up. Art's gone, and Sienna's left by herself, and she looks down and sees the cuts that were on her hand just heal. So she's pretty damn magical now. I mean, she came back to life last time, so it's not that much of a surprise her wounds healed over. Kind of annoying she still has like scars and stuff though, I guess. We had seen this stuff earlier on in the movie, like we got flashbacks of her with her dad showing that she wanted a superhero that was a girl instead of all these boys he's always drawing. So it's always a male superhero, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna make one. And so he's also having these episodes as he's trying to give her this art where it's the hero that she ended up dressing as in the second movie. They were like showing us that he was like trying to prepare her to take on this almost hero role to kill this demon, but we already kind of got explained that in the last movie. And so to end with this, it's kind of like, well, kind of feels like we're back where we were already, because Art runs off, he catches a bus, there's a woman reading a book called The Ninth Circle, so that was kind of a cool little nod to his old short. But then Sienna's vowing to rescue Gabby. She's gonna get her back one way or another. This is just being the ending, because it ends like this. There's no after credit scene or anything. It just goes straight to credits after this, which good, fair. I don't really like after credit scenes. But I think my only complaint with this movie, yes, it is shorter. It had a faster pace than 2. I feel like though, it wasn't so much Terrifier 3 as it was Terrifier 2. Like, let me explain that. Because yeah, we didn't have our hero in the first movie. We just knew about our killer. Okay, fair. 2, we get someone that's supposed to take him down. And then we spend that last half hour really like turning her into the hero. Only for 3, it's just a lot of recovery, just seeing Art do his thing. And I honestly thought we were gonna see more kills. So there's that, and then I felt like the story of her being this great hero, the slayer of the demon, wasn't expanded upon enough as much as it was repeated over what we got from the last movie. I do like seeing that it succeeded as well as it has with a really positive response. I'm gonna once again have to give this one a 7. Maybe if I were to watch these all back to back again at some point, I might rate them all a little higher, but as is, I think they're still good movies. I want them to be great, but since it looks like we are in fact getting at least a 4, I hope story-wise we progress a lot more than we did with 3. Because yeah, you need to do certain things with how you ended off these characters, build this distance only to like kind of slam it all away at the end with like Jonathan suddenly being dead, the whole family just suddenly kidnapped. It was a little rushed in my opinion. Because the other part that was weird, I was watching it with my wife at the theater, right? And we look over each other's like, okay, is she really kidnapped right now? Is this really happening? It felt like a dream sequence, and then it kept going. It's like, okay, so this is what happened. I think the ending on this one was just too sudden for the way the pace of it went, because it was pretty good, and then the ending was very fast. Almost like the opposite feel of what the second movie did. So I am very excited to see what ends up happening with a Terrifier 4. I'm kind of hoping he can end it with 4, but if it turns into something where he does end up deciding to want to do 5 to finish it off or something, okay. But I just don't want to see the series go on for too long. Let's wrap up what we discussed. So I kept going on about how I'm so surprised the series is as big and successful as it's become. And apparently Damien's reasoning behind making Art was there's really no modern horror icons. Not in the same way we have like Freddy, Jason, Leatherface, Chucky, Pennywise, you know, like all those. Pennywise isn't even a slasher villain. A lot of the iconic horror villains we have now are just the old guys. Like, yeah, we got Jigsaw, we have Ghostface, but Ghostface came in the 90s. We don't have a modern icon like that. So the fact that he went and made Art and it finally became one is pretty cool. And I guess another big part of that is he gave that feeling of the old slasher movies while still showing us something new, even if it is very gory and graphic. But because that's so different, I guess it ended up working in its favor. It's like, wow, this feels new. Even though there is plenty of like more, I guess, coal or underground type movies that gives just as much of the splatter and stuff, but doesn't quite have that mainstream appeal of being in that traditional slasher package. Some try, but they don't succeed in the same way that Terrifier was able to. And the fact that this wasn't a reboot, it was a brand new original character, that it was able to stick out, he fits right in. And I think the fact that he chose a mute black and white clown. That works well in his favor because, you know, Pennywise is very bright and colorful, very noisy, and then you have like the opposite of that. I think that was actually a pretty interesting decision, and as you can see, it's worked out. I just find it surprising that people are willing so openly to be okay with this level of violence displayed the way it is, because as I've said, art doesn't just kill, he torments and tortures people to death, so it's kind of impressive that it's as successful as it's become. But then again, I just looked, apparently we're getting another Saw movie, and that's partly what some of those are, so hey, I guess people are into that. I just apparently don't love it as much as a lot of others do. Maybe you're a super fan, or maybe you're kind of like on the other side where you hate it, but you're wondering, hey, why is he so big? But I'm pretty sure that's why, because even when they've tried remaking or rebooting these old slasher franchises, it just never quite worked. Whether they meant to do it on purpose or not, people just didn't cling to it like they did the older movies. And with David Howard Thornton, with this being his like breakout role, it's been pretty funny seeing the other stuff he's done since. Like, he's essentially become I'm gonna call it a mascot killer. He played the mean one in that Grinch parody that I talked about last Christmas, and then coming up pretty soon, I think the start of next year, 2025, he's gonna be freaking Steamboat Willie in Screamboat, made by the same guy that did the mean one. So be on the lookout for me talking about that when that hits. Okay. I know you didn't like some of the stuff I said, but I mean, okay, look, before you get mad at me, you can't blame everything on you. Like, honestly, you were probably the best part of every single one of those. If anything, blame the director, okay? Right? Blame the director, okay? I'm usually a director, so you probably don't like me for that reason either. Are you still gonna kill me, though? I still like the movies, I mean, it seems... Can I at least try? Okay, thank you. You reacted to at least one earlier, so we're just gonna... Okay, how about, what if I did it right here? You ready? I got 2 left. Can I use the last 2 at least? See if that any... I mean, you're pretty much immortal. Might as well at least try. Did they both come out? No? Okay, well, I'm out now, so... How the hell? You're like a twig. Ah, crap, you have a second hand. Oh. Oh, no. What's my Christmas stuff out? Santa! Oh my god, it's Santa! You're dead!
Oh, yes, it's me. Oh, you're gonna have to stick to your own holiday. I'm gonna teach you a lesson. But first, little boy, go hide back there. Go on.
Don't even get to watch? Still love you, Sam. But the angle is kind of slow.
Now, let's settle this. Tell me what you got. Don't you know Santa gives these out every year? I'm back! Let's read my blue sleeves. Oh, this is my world, buddy. Merry Christmas. Are you gonna stay here and think about what you did? All those people, and on Christmas. You stay away from my holiday and kill someone that deserves it. I'm out of here. Oh, that'll show him. Learn the best of my holiday. You there, boy. It's safe now. Santa fixed everything.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I peeked.
Oh, you can thank that Grinch fellow up there. We go way back.
Also, how come you have those glasses?
Oh, these? Santa always has a pair. of butt-kicking glasses. As the claws wants me to cut back on the swearing.
Why does your hair look like that and everything? Like, what's with the beard?
Happy Halloween! See you at Christmas!
Oh, I just left. Okay. You could probably still hear me though, but thanks for doing that for me. I didn't really feel like beating up anyone this time. If you enjoyed what you saw, leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and share the video. And feel free to check out my other channels and follow me on my various social media platforms. I'm currently most active on Instagram, and then you can catch pretty frequent uploads on my gaming channel, and I have at least one upload a month on my food channel. I'm Shyboy 616. Happy Halloween, and I will see you